Rich millionaire brings mistress home and replaces his wife. Now he's desperate to get her back. Anthony Lancaster had it all: wealth, power, and a beautiful wife who stood by him through every triumph and setback. But when he brought his mistress home, replacing the woman who had built his empire by his side, he thought he was trading old love for new passion. He believed he had made the ultimate power move. What he didn't realize was that he wasn't just losing a wife, he was losing the one person who truly knew him. And when the world he so carefully crafted begins to unravel, he finds himself desperate for something money can't buy: a second chance. But some betrayals are unforgivable. And sometimes the one you push away is the one you'll regret losing forever. Stay with me, because this is a story of love, betrayal, and a fall from grace that no one saw coming. Anthony Lancaster was known throughout the bustling city of Lexington Heights as the epitome of success and affluence. He had come from humble beginnings, building his empire of luxury hotels, high-rise condominiums, and upscale restaurants one painstaking step at a time. For the last decade, Anthony had stood at the pinnacle of achievement, gracing the covers of business magazines and rubbing shoulders with billionaires, once even sharing a private lunch with Bill Gates in Seattle to discuss potential philanthropic ventures. Yet behind the glittering facade was a man whose personal life was rapidly unraveling. At the center of his world was his wife, Sophia Lancaster, an elegant, poised woman who had supported him from the day he decided to open his first boutique hotel. At one point, their love seemed unbreakable, forged in the flames of adversity when they'd had barely enough money to pay rent. But power, wealth, and temptations had corroded Anthony's convictions. He found himself entranced by the allure of a younger woman, Carla Moreno, whose intoxicating presence upended everything he cherished. The story of how Anthony Lancaster brought his mistress home, effectively displacing his wife, only to realize his devastating mistake too late, reverberates through the social circles of Lexington Heights to this day. While few know the full account, whispers of betrayal, cunning manipulation, and heartbreak ripple across the corridors of high society. This is a tale not just of romance gone awry, but of redemption sought in the unlikeliest of places. What follows is the complete, unvarnished story of how Anthony's world, and everyone within it, changed forever. Anthony Lancaster had everything money could buy: a lavish mansion in Lexington Heights, holiday villas in the south of France, and an impressive collection of sports cars that seemed to grow larger every year. He also shared a long-standing marriage with Sophia, an inseparable partnership that had survived countless trials. However, with success came new stresses: an ever-expanding schedule of business travels and invitations to elite events where beautiful, charismatic people hovered like moths around the flame of his wealth and influence. It was at one such event, a late-night fundraiser hosted at the Palomino Hotel in Miami, that Anthony first encountered Carla Moreno. She was a rising star in the modeling world, sporting a sky-blue evening gown that clung to her slender frame. He'd just finished speaking with an old friend, Viktor Morozov, an investor who had introduced him once to Elon Musk in a private pitch meeting, and was making his way back to the bar when he noticed Carla standing alone. She sipped a glass of champagne, her dark eyes scanning the crowd with a bored expression. Something in the way she carried herself drew Anthony in. Perhaps it was the mixture of vulnerability and intense confidence. Sophia was in Lexington Heights that weekend, busy with a charity event of her own, so Anthony found himself drifting over to the mysterious woman by the bar. He struck up a conversation, offering to buy her a drink, and she responded with a knowing smile. Carla's father, a minor European aristocrat from Spain, had apparently lost his fortune years ago. Carla told the story with a detached calm that hinted at private pain. She had come to America hoping to find opportunity and success in modeling. "And maybe," she'd said, swirling her champagne, "someone who can help me navigate these dangerous waters." Her eyes flicked meaningfully to Anthony's, and in that moment he felt a shiver of forbidden intrigue course through him. Sophia had always been the center of his universe, but here, amid the flickering lights of the fundraiser, was someone who seemed like a mirror of his own ambitions, hungry, cunning, and yearning for more than what life had dealt her. Over the next few weeks, Carla became an unspoken fixture in his private hours. Anthony would fly her out to remote locations under the guise of business and arrange exclusive photo shoots through his PR connections. There was an electric thrill in their clandestine meetings, stolen touches in secluded corners, whispered phone calls in the dead of night, and illicit text messages that made his heart race like a teenager's. Sophia, ever trusting, believed Anthony's increased travel schedule was due to his escalating business empire. She was the charitable soul, spending her time organizing fundraisers, volunteering at local shelters, and writing heartfelt letters to potential donors for her philanthropic causes. The deception weighed heavily on Anthony at first. He would lie awake next to his unsuspecting wife, torn by guilt, questioning whether his life had gone off track. But inevitably, in the harsh light of day, Carla's magnetism drew him back. He justified it to himself, rationalizing that everyone in my position has these temptations. Months slipped by in this manner, each new day weaving a thread of secrecy into the tapestry of his once honest life. Carla demanded more of his time, more of his resources, and more of his emotional commitment. Soon it wasn't enough for them to meet in hidden locales. She wanted recognition, to be seen in public with him, to stand by his side. Anthony found himself torn between the stability and love of Sophia and the intense burning spark Carla ignited. Then came a moment that would change it all. One evening, Sophia returned from a friend's baby shower to find Anthony pacing anxiously in the living room. He had insisted she come home early, and his unusual urgent tone over the phone left her nerves on edge. When she walked in, she noticed he looked pale, like he hadn't slept in days. The entire house seemed to hum with unspoken tension. Before Sophia could even set down her purse, he said, "We need to talk." They took a seat in the formal living room. Anthony cleared his throat. He had planned a carefully worded confession, something that would minimize the damage, but the truth, once it began to spill, possessed a momentum of its own. He admitted he had been seeing Carla Moreno for several months, that Carla had become someone important to him. The color drained from Sophia's face as he spoke, and she struggled to keep her composure. How could you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best attempt at steadiness. Anthony mumbled something about their emotional distance, about how he felt neglected while she focused on charities. It was a cheap excuse, and they both knew it. The flicker of heartbreak in Sophia's eyes told him he had crossed an unforgivable line. Yet, rather than beg for forgiveness and promise to end the affair, Anthony made the catastrophic decision to double down. He confessed that Carla was planning to move to Lexington Heights, and that he wanted her near him, no matter the cost. Sophia couldn't believe what she was hearing. Outraged and devastated, she demanded he break off contact with Carla immediately, but to her growing horror, Anthony refused. He insisted he cared for Carla and wasn't willing to end it. A sickening realization washed over Sophia. Her husband wasn't just having an affair. He was thinking about rewriting their life entirely. Through tears, Sophia gave an ultimatum. "Either you end it with Carla and commit to counseling with me, or we're done." Anthony responded with a cold confidence that took her breath away. "I can't lose Carla," he said, his voice raw. "I want you to stay, Sophia, but things can't go back to how they were. If you can't accept this arrangement, I don't know what to tell you." She stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest, the reality of betrayal ripping through her. Never had she dreamed that the boy who once vowed everlasting love would stand before her and propose such a twisted scenario. A sob choked out of her throat, and she fled up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her, where she cried until dawn. 3 days later, Sophia packed her essentials and left for her sister's home in Chicago. She refused to speak to Anthony, refusing even to answer his phone calls or messages. A single text came through from him on the day she left. "I'm sorry, but I need you to understand. Please don't do anything rash. I still love you." She deleted it without reply. Anthony, consumed by both guilt and defiance, told himself he was only following his heart. Or at least that's what Carla had whispered into his ear, insisting he deserved to be with someone who made him feel alive again. Determined to prove his love for Carla was more than a fleeting affair, he orchestrated her move to Lexington Heights, installing her in a luxurious penthouse downtown. Sophia was gone, and Anthony convinced himself he had taken the correct path, diving headlong into the web of Carla's charms. He didn't fully grasp it then, but in that moment he had set fire to a vow once cherished above all else. Weeks turned into months. Carla Moreno's arrival in Lexington Heights was anything but subtle. Anthony's PR team managed to keep gossip columns at bay for a time, but rumors began to spread that a mysterious woman, young, foreign, and impossibly beautiful, had captured the heart of one of the city's wealthiest men. Even the staff in Anthony's mansion whispered about Carla's presence in hushed tones, glancing nervously around corners. Carla quickly embedded herself in Anthony's lifestyle. She accompanied him to glitzy galas, stepping out of limousines in designer dresses that Anthony paid for with a single swipe of his platinum credit card. She redecorated the penthouse to her liking, bringing in modern art and plush furnishings. She convinced Anthony to purchase a thoroughbred horse she'd admired at a charity auction in California, a sleek chestnut stallion named King's Ransom. "It's an investment," she purred, stroking the horse's mane, while Anthony watched with a mixture of apprehension and fascination. Meanwhile, the mansion that Sophia had once called home felt emptier by the day. Anthony couldn't bear to sleep in the master bedroom alone, so he retreated to a smaller guest suite, telling himself it was more comfortable. In truth, he couldn't face the haunting memories of Sophia's lingering fragrance in the master bedroom, nor the ghost of what their marriage had been. Guilt weighed heavily on him each night, even as he sent Carla playful texts and arranged for weekend getaways in exotic locales. Some nights, Anthony found himself standing alone in the living room, glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the grand piano Sophia used to play. She had a remarkable ear for music, and often spent her evenings composing short melodies, filling the cavernous mansion with warmth. Now the piano's lid collected dust, and the halls seemed to echo with a hollow hush. Carla, sensing Anthony's bouts of remorse, sought to distract him with lavish parties and social engagements. She introduced him to her circle of fashionable friends, artists, models, and influencers who thrived on the adrenaline of high society. Gatherings in Carla's penthouse became legendary, free-flowing champagne, imported delicacies, DJs flown in from Ibiza, and a guest list curated to include only the most glamorous individuals. Anthony would often find himself cornered by these socialites, who flattered him with compliments and flirtations as though he were the center of the universe. In the midst of these parties, Anthony would catch glimpses of Carla across the room, laughing easily with her new admirers. She moved effortlessly between them, her eyes alight with mischief, controlling the atmosphere as though she were the queen of some decadent court. It was a far cry from Sophia's quiet confidence and philanthropic heart. But as the days turned into a blur of opulence, Anthony began to notice subtle changes in Carla's demeanor. She became more demanding. Where once she had asked politely for modest help, like introducing her to photographers or setting up small modeling gigs, she now demanded the best agencies, the biggest runways, and the most exclusive endorsements. She insisted on attending every high-profile event Anthony was invited to, eventually overshadowing even his presence. Some of Anthony's business associates began asking, half-jokingly, if Carla was now running the show. Worse still, Carla seemed to become bored with Anthony's bouts of seriousness. When he lamented his guilt over Sophia, Carla would roll her eyes. "She left you, didn't she?" The door was always open for her to return, and she chose to walk away, she'd say dismissively, lighting a cigarette, despite Anthony's request that she not smoke indoors. "You belong to me now. You made your choice." Her words, so callous, stoked a small ember of resentment in Anthony. He bristled at her lack of empathy and her quickness to dismiss Sophia's heartbreak. A storm brewed within him, but every time he thought of confronting Carla, he recalled how much he'd already invested in their relationship, how many bridges he'd burned. He told himself it was too late to turn back. Pride, combined with shame, locked him into the life he had created. For a time, though, the facade held. The city's gossip columns printed stories about Anthony and Carla's whirlwind romance, sprinkled with sensational rumors about their lavish parties. Very few dared to ask directly about Sophia, either out of fear or courtesy, but her absence from Anthony's side was a glaring void. Anthony's own mother, Vanessa Lancaster, living in quiet retirement in a cottage by the sea, refused his calls, appalled by how he had treated Sophia. Some of Anthony's siblings also distanced themselves. In the new hush surrounding him, Anthony battled with the realization that the life he had wanted might no longer be the one he had ended up with. Far away from the sprawling mansion and the glossy parties, Sophia Lancaster found solace in the arms of her older sister, Melissa Park. Melissa's Chicago townhouse was modest but warm, filled with the aroma of home-cooked meals and the laughter of her two children, Jacob and Lily. Sophia tried to keep her composure for their sake, but nights brought floods of tears she could no longer hold back. Melissa did her best to console her sister, encouraging her to see a therapist and reminding her that she was not alone. Sophia spent her days in therapy sessions, penning emotional diary entries and attempting to rebuild her sense of self-worth. She also took on small contractual work with local charities, continuing her passion for helping others. In time, she developed a close friendship with one of her therapist's other clients, an older widow named Harriet Daniels, who facilitated group discussions for women going through divorce and betrayal. One day, Harriet organized a weekend retreat at a lakeside cabin in Michigan. Surrounded by a circle of women who had faced similar heartbreak, Sophia began to unearth her own resilience. The group practiced daily mindfulness, hiked through fall foliage, and shared vulnerable stories by a crackling fireplace. It was here that Sophia finally spoke the words she had been dreading. "I think my marriage is really over." As tears glistened on her cheeks, Harriet placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Your marriage might be over," she said softly, "but your life is just beginning." During the retreat, Sophia realized that her identity had long been entwined with Anthony's ambitions and successes. She had helped him build his empire, but in the process she'd buried her own dreams. The heartbreak of his betrayal was monumental, yes, but in that heartbreak a new door had opened, a chance for her to step into the spotlight of her own life. With renewed conviction, Sophia began crafting a plan. First, she wanted to revisit Lexington Heights to resolve the legal side of her separation, determine the distribution of assets, and clarify her future. She was no gold digger, but she refused to walk away from the life she had helped build with nothing. More importantly, she wanted to confront Anthony face to face, not for his sake, but for hers. She deserved closure, a final conversation that would let her bury the past and move forward. Yet as determined as she was, she could not quell the tremor of anxiety every time she thought of stepping foot in that grand mansion again. Memories of love, laughter, and eventually betrayal haunted her dreams. She would have to brace herself for seeing Anthony and possibly Carla in the home that she had nurtured for so many years. In a surprising twist, her old friend and legal advisor, Mark Beringer, reached out with an offer to help. He had once provided pro bono work for one of Sophia's charities and had always admired her unwavering dedication. On hearing about her troubles, Mark volunteered to guide her through the complexities of potential divorce proceedings. Sophia, initially hesitant, ultimately agreed. The support felt like a lifeline. 2 months after moving in with Melissa, Sophia steeled herself for a trip back to Lexington Heights. She would stay in a hotel, finalize her decisions with Mark, and decide once and for all the direction of her life. On a cold December afternoon, she boarded a train bound for the city that had once been her entire universe, unsure of what she might find. While Sophia was rediscovering her strength in Chicago, cracks were forming in Carla and Anthony's relationship in Lexington Heights. Carla's insatiable appetite for status and recognition led her to push Anthony harder and harder. She wanted him to buy her a sprawling estate rather than the penthouse. She wanted a new line of credit to support her budding fashion brand. She wanted a seat on the board of one of Anthony's companies, an outlandish demand that made even the loyal corporate attorney Jonathan Caldwell raise an eyebrow. Anthony, feeling the pressure, tried to appease her. He arranged meetings for her with top investors, introduced her to influential magazine editors, and showered her with expensive gifts. But the more he gave, the more Carla seemed to crave. Her nights out grew wilder, sometimes returning home well after dawn, with a gaggle of sycophants in tow. Anthony began receiving calls from enraged neighbors, complaining about the raucous parties at Carla's penthouse. When he confronted her, Carla laughed, calling him an old man for caring too much about what other people thought. Late one night, after a confrontation that ended with Carla storming out of the penthouse, Anthony decided to return to his mansion alone. He drifted through its silent corridors, recalling the last real conversation he had with Sophia here. Guilt washed over him like a tidal wave. He had driven away a woman who genuinely cared about him, who had supported him through every triumph and failure, and replaced her with a person who increasingly seemed more interested in his wallet than his heart. He wandered into the master bedroom, which he had largely avoided since Sophia's departure. He opened her closet, finding it still half filled with her belongings, vintage dresses, some formal gowns, even a pair of running shoes she loved. The faint smell of her perfume lingered on the clothes, and for a moment he felt her presence, like a comforting hand on his shoulder. A wave of regret and sorrow overcame him, and for the first time in years, Anthony Lancaster broke down, sobbing quietly into the empty room. In the days that followed, he tried to distance himself from Carla. He turned down some of her more outrageous spending requests and started missing events she insisted he attend. When Carla discovered he had secretly deposited a sum of money into a separate account, one that she had no control over, her anger was explosive. She accused him of no longer trusting her, of plotting to leave her for his precious Sophia. Their arguments escalated, and Carla made a dramatic display of packing her designer luggage, threatening to walk out for good if he wouldn't meet her demands. For a moment, Anthony almost wished she would walk out and never return. But pride, fear, and the lingering infatuation still held him back. He was too entangled in the web he had woven. The press, the city's elites, even his investors had grown used to Carla at his side. He dreaded the publicity nightmare that might ensue if Carla decided to publicly slander him, or worse, reveal the intimate details of their affair. He was exhausted by the constant drama, yet still he clung to the hope that he could somehow fix the mess he'd made. Meanwhile, a small part of him still yearned for Sophia, for her grace, her unwavering support, her tender smile. He knew she was no longer in the city, but every day he imagined what he would say if he could see her again. The heaviness of regret began to outweigh his fear of confronting the truth. Little did he know, Sophia Lancaster was already on her way back to Lexington Heights, ready to face him once more. Sophia arrived in Lexington Heights under a veil of winter clouds. Snow flurries dusted the city streets, adding a melancholic beauty to the place she used to call home. She checked into a modest suite at the Lancaster Grand, a luxury hotel Anthony had built early in his career, ironically named after himself. Feeling a pang of nostalgia as she passed the gilded lobby, she remembered the day the hotel first opened, how she and Anthony had stood side by side, greeting guests, both brimming with pride. Mark Beringer met her the next morning to discuss the path forward. Over coffee in the hotel's lounge, he explained her legal options, everything from reconciliation to a formal divorce. But as they talked, Sophia sensed a quiver in her heart. She had come here certain she wanted a divorce, yet the moment she set foot back in the city, old memories and emotions came flooding in. She needed clarity, a final conversation with Anthony to ascertain whether there was anything left worth saving. Mark arranged a meeting at the offices of Caldwell Associates, the law firm that also represented Anthony. The neutral territory seemed appropriate, a place of polished mahogany tables and quiet conference rooms, impersonal enough to keep tensions in check. On the day of the meeting, Sophia wore a simple black dress and a warm grey coat, appearing poised yet vulnerable. Her heart hammered in her chest when she saw Anthony waiting in the lobby. He stood up, eyes locking onto hers for the first time in months. She saw in his face an amalgam of regret, relief, and uncertainty. He looked thinner, with dark shadows under his eyes, as though he hadn't been sleeping well. Time had not been kind to either of them. "Hello, Sophia," he managed, voice wavering. She nodded in greeting, unsure if she trusted her voice to remain steady. Behind a conference table, flanked by Mark and Jonathan Caldwell, Anthony and Sophia took seats across from each other. No words were exchanged for a long moment, until Caldwell, in his measured tone, began outlining the agenda. A preliminary discussion about the marital assets, any spousal support, and the question of legal separation or divorce. "I'd like a private moment with my husband," Sophia said unexpectedly, voice quiet yet resolute. Caldwell hesitated, but eventually the lawyers stepped out into the corridor, leaving Anthony and Sophia alone. The silence between them crackled like static electricity. Finally, Anthony spoke. "Sophia," he said, eyes brimming with sorrow, I've missed you. I know that must sound ridiculous after everything I've done." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said softly. "I loved you, Anthony, more than anything, and it killed me when you brought her into our life." He exhaled, his body visibly trembling. "I know. I've made the biggest mistake of my life. Carla, she's not what I thought she was. Or maybe she is. But I was just too blind to see." Sophia's eyes glistened with tears. "I'm not here to offer you salvation," she said, carefully choosing her words. "I'm here to decide if there's anything left to fight for." His gaze fell to the table. "I've wanted to see you every day since you left. I kept hoping you'd call, that you'd show up at the door, but I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness." He paused, drawing a ragged breath. "I want you back, Sophia." The words hung in the air. He reached across the table for her hand, but she pulled away reflexively. She was not ready to be touched by him, not yet. "Everything's changed," she murmured. "You think a few apologies can erase the betrayal, the humiliation?" Anthony shook his head. "No, but I want a chance to earn back your trust. If you'd let me, I'll do anything." Sophia's heart pounded as she fought a tempest of emotions. She wanted to scream at him for his selfishness, for how easily he had dismissed her when Carla appeared. She wanted to hate him for throwing away their marriage. And yet, in the quiet corner of her soul, she recognized the sincerity of his remorse. "Do you still see Carla?" Sophia asked, her voice catching. "I've been trying to distance myself for weeks," he said, swallowing hard. "She won't go quietly, Sophia. She's threatened to sue me, blackmail me, everything, but I'm done with her. I promise." Despite herself, a spark of concern for Anthony flickered within her. It was the caretaker in her, the woman who had shared years of her life with him, that felt a pang of empathy. But she hadn't forgotten the searing pain of betrayal. She stared at the man she had once called her soulmate, wondering whether his desperation was real or if it was just fear of losing the comfortable stability she had provided. Outside the door, Mark and Caldwell waited. The clock ticked audibly in the quiet conference room. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice resonating with a newfound strength. "I won't make any promises," she said, "but I'll speak with you again. For now, let's keep this meeting to asset distribution. We'll revisit everything else later." Anthony's shoulders sagged, as though some heavy burden had temporarily lifted. He nodded, and a glimmer of hope flashed across his face. "Thank you," he whispered. She only nodded, pressing her lips together as she struggled to maintain composure. With that, she signalled for Mark and Caldwell to re-enter the room, each returning to their respective seats. In the chilly, formal atmosphere of the law firm, the process of dividing a life's worth of shared dreams began. But in the undercurrent, something else stirred, a hint of redemption perhaps, or an echo of a love that refused to be entirely silenced. Carla Moreno was not one to relinquish power quietly. When she learned of Sophia's return to Lexington Heights, and more importantly that Anthony was entertaining the possibility of reconciliation, a storm of jealousy and rage consumed her. She confronted Anthony one night in his penthouse, having tracked him down after he ignored her calls all evening. "So you're just done with me?" she spat, eyes flashing. She stood in the doorway, a glossy fur coat draped over her slender shoulders, her hair dishevelled from the night's windy snowfall. "I'm done with the lies," Anthony replied, weariness etched in his voice. "I want out, Carla. This isn't working." She scoffed, stepping forward. "Oh, you think you can just throw me away like an old toy now that your precious wife is back in town? Think again, Anthony." She lowered her voice, her words dripping venom. "If you try to cut me off, I'll make sure everyone hears about how you manipulated me, about all the money you funneled into my accounts to keep me quiet. I'll drag your name through every gossip column in the country." Anthony's temper flared. "Don't you dare pin this on me. You wanted this. You pushed for it. And don't pretend you care about me. You just care about my money." Carla's eyes narrowed into icy slits. For a moment, Anthony worried she might lash out physically, but she simply dropped her fur coat onto a nearby chair, marched up to him, and poked a manicured finger into his chest. "Don't you dare try to rewrite history. You chased me, Anthony. You said you wanted me in your life, that you'd do anything for me. And now that I've built a new life here, you want to take it all away?" Her lips curled in disdain. "You owe me." Before Anthony could respond, she brushed past him and sat down on the leather sofa, crossing her legs. "I want a settlement," she said, eyes locked on his. "Enough to maintain my lifestyle. Or else I go public." Anthony clenched his fists, rage mixing with shame. He sank into an armchair, burying his face in his hands. How had he let it get to this point? His empire, his family, his reputation, all were on the line. He looked up, steeling himself. "Fine," he said at last. "I'll have Caldwell draft something, but don't expect miracles." Carla's lip twitched in a half-smile. She grabbed her coat, stood up, and sauntered toward the door, casting a mocking glance over her shoulder. "I knew you'd see sense. You always have, darling." As her footsteps receded down the hallway, Anthony felt a wave of disgust wash over him. Disgust at Carla, yes, but mostly at himself. In a matter of months he had destroyed the life he'd built with Sophia. Now he was dancing on strings pulled by a woman who had no qualms about holding him hostage, emotionally and financially. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Sophia's number, heart pounding. He stared at it, longing to call, but he also knew it was too soon. How could he ask her for a second chance when he was still entangled in Carla's threats? After a sleepless night, Anthony met with Caldwell the next morning to discuss a potential settlement for Carla. Caldwell was wary, warning that a large payout might embolden her or lead to further demands. But Anthony couldn't see another way out. He needed Carla gone, for good, if he had any hope of making amends with Sophia or even preserving some shred of dignity. Behind the scenes, Sophia was finishing her last round of meetings with Mark. She had secured her share of the marital assets, enough to be comfortable and to continue her philanthropic work, even if she decided to relocate permanently to Chicago. The question remained, was she ready to close the door on Anthony forever? A swirl of conflicting emotions weighed on her as she walked through the city's wintry streets. She recalled Anthony's contrite expression at the law firm, the genuine sorrow in his eyes. Yet she also remembered every tear she shed, every humiliating moment when she realized she had been replaced by another woman. Mark, sensing her turmoil, advised her to take her time. "You don't have to decide now," he said, "but don't forget what led you to this point." That night, as a fresh snowfall coated the city, Sophia found herself standing outside the iron gates of the Lancaster mansion. She had come here almost on autopilot, drawn by memories and the need for closure. The gates were locked, the driveway empty. She stared through the bars at the large silhouette of the home she had once lovingly decorated, where she and Anthony used to plan their future together. A flood of emotion overcame her. She fought the urge to break down, to crumple in the snow. Instead, she turned away, determined to find her own path, with or without Anthony Lancaster. Days later, Sophia received an unexpected phone call. Anthony's voice quivered on the other end. "Sophia, it's me," he said, hesitating. "I've ended things with Carla, officially. Caldwell is working out details. She won't be part of our lives anymore." Sophia's heart pounded. The finality in his tone suggested a real change, though she remained cautious. "I'm not sure what you want me to say," she replied. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything," he continued, "but I want to see you, one last time, or maybe more if you're willing." Her silence spoke volumes. Memories of their life together collided with memories of her anguish. At length, she sighed. "Fine," she whispered, "but I make no promises." They met at a discreet restaurant outside Lexington Heights, where the glow of candlelight softened the tension between them. Anthony had arrived early, and when Sophia walked in, he stood to greet her, hands trembling. She noticed a vulnerability about him, a humility she hadn't seen in years. After ordering tea and coffee, they sat, an awkward quiet draping over them. Finally, Anthony spoke, his voice husky with emotion. "I'm sorry," he said, face etched with regret. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me, or even if you should, but I need you to know how deeply I regret everything." Sophia studied him, tears pooling in her eyes. "I don't think you understand how badly you hurt me. I trusted you with my life. You broke that trust in the cruelest way." He reached across the table haltingly, and this time she didn't pull away. His hand found hers, and she felt the warmth of his touch, a reminder of happier times. "I'm not asking for forgiveness all at once," he said quietly. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my days proving that to you, if you'll let me." For a moment, the world seemed to slow, as if fate itself paused to listen. Sophia searched his eyes for any trace of the arrogance and selfishness that had destroyed their marriage. Instead, she found a broken man, one who appeared sincere in his desire to make amends. She squeezed his hand gently. "Anthony," she began, "I don't know if I can ever love you the same way, but a part of me still cares for you, maybe always will." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "I can't promise we'll be what we once were, but if you truly want to earn back my trust, we can try." Emotions flooded Anthony's face. Hope, relief, gratitude. In that small, intimate restaurant, they decided on the first step, a form of counseling, an honest dialogue that might help them pick up the shattered pieces. In the ensuing weeks, they attended couples therapy sessions, each bearing their vulnerabilities. Anthony opened up about feeling pressured by his success and seeking excitement in the wrong places. Sophia confessed how lonely she had felt, her identity swallowed by Anthony's vast ambition. They tread delicately, mindful that any chance at renewal required confronting the raw pain of betrayal. Carla Moreno, meanwhile, accepted a significant payout, severed her ties with Anthony, and vanished into the frenetic world of international travel and high society. Rumors placed her in Monaco or Dubai or the south of France, with a new companion each time. But Anthony no longer cared about her whereabouts. His focus had shifted entirely to saving the marriage he had nearly destroyed. The final scene of their reconciliation took place in the Lancaster mansion, a home tainted by sorrow, but still echoing with memories of genuine love. Sophia stood by the grand piano she had once adored, lightly touching its keys as Anthony watched from the doorway. "I haven't played in so long," she said, her voice trembling with nostalgia. Anthony walked over and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Play something," he urged softly. She gazed at him, her eyes filled with a tentative hope. Slowly, she sat down and began to play a simple melody, her fingers finding their way across the keys. The notes flowed, tentative at first, then gathering conviction, filling the cavernous space with a haunting beauty. Anthony closed his eyes, tears streaming down his cheeks, letting the music wash over him, a poignant reminder of the love they once shared. When the final chord faded, Sophia turned to Anthony, and he knelt before her, taking her hands into his. "I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of another chance," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "If you ever doubt me, tell me, and I'll do everything in my power to show you I've changed." She nodded, her tears mingling with his. "We still have a lot of work to do," she said, voice trembling. "But maybe we can heal together." And in that moment, with the last echoes of the piano still lingering in the air, they both realized that the road to redemption was long. The scars of betrayal would never fully vanish, but under the glow of a winter sunset filtering through the mansion's stained-glass windows, Anthony and Sophia embraced, choosing hope over despair. Despite the tragedies, the manipulations, and the heartbreak, love, deep, abiding love, found a way to take root once more. In the years that followed, the story of Anthony Lancaster and Sophia became something of a legend in Lexington Heights, a cautionary tale of how power and temptation can corrupt, but also a testament to the resilience of love. Anthony sold the penthouse he had once gifted Carla, donating most of the proceeds to Sophia's charities. He also quietly stepped back from his more ostentatious circles, refocusing his energy on rebuilding trust with Sophia and supporting projects that genuinely helped others. Sophia, though scarred by betrayal, found new strength in the adversity she had faced. She expanded her philanthropic work, founding a new foundation focused on supporting women who had suffered from infidelity and divorce. She also returned to her passion for music, performing intimate piano recitals at charity events. Over time, the foundation gained national recognition, and she found a renewed sense of purpose and identity. Their marriage, forever changed by the events that tore them apart, evolved into a different kind of bond, a cautious, deliberate commitment. They established clear boundaries, attended therapy regularly, and never shied away from the hard conversations about trust and transparency. For Anthony, every moment with Sophia was a chance to prove he was no longer the man who so callously cast her aside. For Sophia, each day was a step toward forgiving herself for ever believing she wasn't enough. Occasionally, in the hushed corners of society galas, one might still hear a whisper of Carla Moreno's name, an unconfirmed rumor of her latest escapade in some distant city, but the spectre of her hold on Anthony and Sophia had long dissipated. She became little more than a footnote in the unfolding story of two people who chose to fight for a love that, although battered, refused to die. People often asked Anthony how he managed to win Sophia back. In those moments he would smile ruefully and say, "I didn't win her. I was given grace beyond what I deserved, and that's something I'll never take for granted again." In the grand scheme of life, redemption is never guaranteed. It is earned through humility, sacrifice, and the unwavering dedication to repair what was broken. For Anthony Lancaster and his wife Sophia, redemption arrived like a fragile seed planted in scorched earth, fragile yet full of potential, waiting to be nurtured into something stronger and more beautiful than what had existed before. In the end, the cost was high and the journey arduous. But they found their way, proving that even amid the ashes of betrayal, love can spark anew. In the end, Anthony Lancaster learned the hard way that some mistakes can't be undone, and not every love story gets a second chance. He lost everything chasing a fantasy, only to realize that the real treasure had been beside him all along. But life has a way of teaching us lessons, whether we're ready for them or not. And for Anthony, redemption wasn't just about winning Sophia back. It was about proving every single day that he had changed. Was it enough? Only time would tell. If you enjoyed this story and want more drama, twists, and life-changing moments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more to come, and you won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button now and stay tuned for the next story.
Pregnant wife catches millionaire husband sleeping with her best friend, now mistress, double betrayal. The night sky glittered over Manhattan's skyline, a symbol of limitless fortunes and bright possibilities. Yet inside a lavish penthouse overlooking those brilliant city lights, Rachel Thompson's reality would collapse in a single, devastating heartbeat. Her husband, Jonathan Thompson, a self-made millionaire with a polished reputation, and her closest confidant, Miranda Garcia, the best friend she trusted with her innermost secrets, had violated every vow of loyalty. Stepping into that darkened bedroom, Rachel never imagined she'd witness a betrayal so profound it would split her life into a before and an after. Hearts, dreams, and trust were about to be shattered in ways none of them could ever undo. Rachel Thompson once believed she was living the ultimate Manhattan fairy tale. Born and raised in a small town in upstate New York, she had always dreamed of bigger horizons, city lights, high-rise apartments, and a glamorous lifestyle. That dream sprang to life after she met Jonathan Thompson, a rising star in the finance world. He was the classic self-made millionaire, sharp suits, sharper wit, and an aura of confidence that turned heads wherever he went. They married in a ceremony that dazzled society pages. At the swanky Waldorf Astoria, Rachel glided down the aisle in a custom lace gown, her heart brimming with love and excitement. The next day, tabloids blared headlines about the finance mogul's romantic wedding to small-town sweetheart. Jonathan, ever the charismatic figure, expressed unwavering devotion to his new bride. Rachel, in turn, believed she had found a partner who appreciated her genuine heart more than her social standing. In these early months of marriage, Rachel discovered that affluence came with both perks and pressures. She joined Jonathan at charity galas, dinners with powerful CEOs, and philanthropic luncheons that served more as networking events than heartfelt gatherings. At times, she felt like an actress in an extravagant play, unsure if her lines matched the grand stage she'd stumbled onto. Still, she tried to carve out a meaningful role in Jonathan's world. She nurtured her love of art by organizing high-profile auctions to benefit local youth programs. She learned the unspoken etiquette of social clubs, smiling through occasional snubs from jaded socialites who dismissed her as just another trophy wife. Despite such hurdles, Rachel cherished the glimpses of genuine warmth Jonathan showed, like the nights he whisked her away for a simple dinner in Chinatown, claiming it reminded him of the humble origins he'd overcome. All the while, Rachel's best friend, Miranda Garcia, stood as her anchor. They had been inseparable since college, forging a deep bond over shared heartbreaks, late-night pizzas, and ambitious plans for the future. When Rachel faced doubts about adapting to the Thompson family's opulent lifestyle, Miranda provided unwavering reassurance. Miranda was everything Rachel admired: confident, brilliant, and fiercely loyal, so it seemed. Yet, behind the glitzy penthouse walls, subtle cracks hinted that not all was perfect. Rachel noticed Jonathan's occasional late nights at the office, suspicious phone calls ending abruptly when she walked into the room, and fleeting shadows in his gaze. But love can be a formidable shield against suspicion. She convinced herself that every successful man should be busy, and that her best friend's unwavering presence only proved how blessed she was. Little did Rachel know, A merciless truth lurked just beyond the horizon, one that would shatter her illusions of love, trust, and the best friendship she had ever known. Miranda Garcia was the kind of woman who turned heads effortlessly. She carried herself with a natural grace, accentuated by a tall frame and sleek black hair that cascaded down her back. Raised in a middle-class household, Miranda had clawed her way through college by juggling part-time jobs and scholarships. Her ambition rivaled that of any Ivy League graduate, and her intelligence shone just as brightly. Rachel met Miranda on their first day at Hudson University. They were assigned as roommates in a cramped dorm, forced to share bunk beds and endure questionable cafeteria food. Their backgrounds were different. Rachel grew up in a cozy, rural environment, whereas Miranda had experienced a more suburban lifestyle, but they bonded over a shared hunger for success and an aversion to the campus's petty drama. Miranda studied communications and marketing, soon distinguishing herself with top grades and a knack for persuasive speech. She had a flair for turning even the most casual conversation into a stepping stone for networking. Rachel admired her friend's tenacity. No matter how many obstacles life threw her way, Miranda tackled them with unapologetic boldness. After graduation, they kept close as they both moved to Manhattan. Miranda landed a job in public relations, quickly ascending the corporate ladder at a boutique PR firm. Meanwhile, Rachel's path diverged when she met Jonathan. She left behind her own budding career in art curation to support her husband's demanding schedule. Despite the shift, Miranda and Rachel remained inseparable. They met for weekly brunches in Soho, attended yoga classes together, and occasionally confided in each other about personal insecurities. While Rachel sometimes felt overshadowed by her new lifestyle, Miranda seemed genuinely supportive. She listened intently to Rachel's worries about high society pressures and validated her feelings whenever Jonathan's world felt stifling. Beyond her unwavering support, Miranda also possessed an edge that both intrigued and unsettled Rachel. She was fierce in pursuit of her goals, some might say ruthless. But Rachel never questioned Miranda's loyalty. She'd seen her friend defend her countless times against mean-spirited gossip or cynical acquaintances who doubted Rachel's place beside a millionaire husband. As time flowed, Miranda became something of an unofficial advisor to Rachel. She suggested ways to navigate social events with confidence, reminded Rachel to maintain her own identity, and even connected her with philanthropic contacts that complemented Jonathan's circle. Rachel believed that having Miranda in her corner was proof positive that she'd never lose her sense of self. If anything, she felt grateful that her best friend understood the complexities of her new life. Unbeknownst to Rachel, Miranda's ambitions stretched further than any PR career or social network expansion. Beneath the polished exterior and comforting friendship, she carried secrets that would set the stage for an emotional explosion. And the match that would ignite that fuse was creeping ever closer, threatening to destroy everything Rachel thought she knew. The shifting tides in Jonathan's behavior began subtly. At first, it was small things, text messages he kept hidden, whispered phone calls. He excused himself to take in the other room. Rachel, trained by love to trust, brushed these off as typical of someone in the high-stakes financial sector. If he didn't want to reveal deal details, perhaps it was simply to protect her from the stress or legal constraints. She told herself as much whenever anxiety crept in. Then came the nights he didn't come home until well past midnight. He claimed emergency meetings with clients on a European time zone. Yet even that might have been believable. Jonathan was known to handle global investments, so it seemed plausible. But Rachel couldn't ignore how disheveled he sometimes appeared, tie loose, hair askew, the faint whiff of perfume that wasn't hers. One evening, she dared to question him. "You smell different," she said gently, searching his eyes for honesty. A flicker of guilt flashed in those dark irises, but he masked it with a disarming grin. "A new cologne from a meeting," he insisted. "Maybe it's the scent in the taxi." His explanation felt flimsy, but Rachel didn't press. She hated the thought of turning into a suspicious wife. While Jonathan's distance grew, ironically, Miranda's presence increased. She dropped by the penthouse more often. Sometimes she brought dinner or a new bottle of wine she'd discovered. She'd lounge in the living room with Rachel, asking pointed questions about how things were going. "Is everything okay with you two? You seem stressed," she'd remark, her tone laced with genuine concern. Rachel confided in her friend about the late nights, the uncertain hush that fell between her and Jonathan. "Maybe he's feeling pressured," Miranda would suggest, gently patting Rachel's hand. "He's a man with huge responsibilities. These guys get so wrapped up in their world, they forget how it looks from the outside." She urged Rachel to be patient, to remain calm and supportive. Confrontation might push him away, Miranda warned. As the stress piled on, Rachel found herself more reliant on Miranda's advice. Her best friend's unwavering encouragement reassured her that she wasn't overreacting. After all, Miranda had no reason to mislead her, so Rachel thought. She truly believed Miranda was her champion, the protective force who'd stand by her no matter what storms brewed. Yet, in moments of quiet reflection, Rachel felt a pang of unease. She noticed how her friend sometimes vanished after Jonathan's calls, or how she seemed to know more than she let on about Jonathan's business. She dismissed those thoughts as paranoia. She had no reason to suspect the two people she loved most, her husband and her best friend, would conspire to betray her. The very idea was unthinkable. In the days to come, the unthinkable would become undeniable. For hidden behind the forced smiles and hasty excuses was a betrayal brewing, one that neither Jonathan nor Miranda intended for Rachel to discover, at least not until they had locked her out of the life she'd built. But fate had other plans, setting the stage for a heartbreak so deep it would eclipse any illusions of loyalty left in Rachel's heart. Rachel always trusted her gut, but ever since stepping into her new life, she found herself second-guessing those instincts, lulled by the veneer of wealth and camaraderie. Still, certain moments pricked her subconscious. A hush fell over the room whenever she entered, and Jonathan quickly hung up a call. Miranda, upon seeing Rachel approach a conversation between them, abruptly changed the subject to trivial gossip. Or that afternoon, when a bouquet of expensive orchids arrived at the penthouse with no note, Jonathan insisted they were from a business associate. Miranda, for no reason Rachel could deduce, grew uneasy at the sight of them. Late at night, Rachel sometimes woke to find Jonathan missing from their bed, only to discover him in the living room, speaking softly on the phone. He'd claim restlessness, flipping through financial portfolios on his laptop. She'd sense tension in his posture, a glimmer of annoyance that she'd disturbed him. No matter his rationales, a persistent hollowness in her chest grew. Increasingly, she noticed Miranda's shift, too. Her friend sometimes appeared anxious around Jonathan, stealing guarded glances as though tracking his every reaction. Then, in a split second, she'd revert to the supportive BFF persona, smiling widely, offering Rachel comforting hugs, if she even hinted at marital stress. The more contradictory behaviors Miranda displayed, the more they fed Rachel's suspicion that something was off. One weekend, an unexpected scenario amplified her doubts. Jonathan claimed he was away in D.C. for a corporate conference, but his key liaison, whom Rachel had once dined with, posted pictures on social media clearly set in Los Angeles. There was no mention of Jonathan traveling with him. Rachel confronted Jonathan gently over FaceTime. He flashed irritation. "Plans changed last minute," he snapped. "Why are you prying? You know how fluid deals can be." Miranda, discovering Rachel's concerns that Monday, quickly soothed her. Jonathan's a busy man. Maybe he's handling a sensitive takeover or something hush-hush, she reasoned, brushing aside the odd details. Don't let social media posts rile you up. Rachel wanted to believe that. She had no solid proof, just a swirl of inconsistencies. But a wise voice inside her whispered that ignoring so many signs would be foolish. She decided to quietly start paying closer attention. She reviewed credit card statements, noticing unexplained charges from luxury spas and restaurants in Manhattan. She asked gentle questions around Jonathan's office staff, receiving polite but tight-lipped responses. The more she dug, the more anxious she became, as if an invisible noose of betrayal was tightening. Miranda's unwavering calm didn't help. Or perhaps it was too unwavering. The best friend who once championed total honesty seemed adept at redirecting or deflecting. Rachel tried to push away paranoid thoughts. Perhaps Miranda was just trying to help. Perhaps Jonathan's secrets were simply career-related. Yet, the more she tried to rationalize, the deeper her sense of dread sank. A storm was gathering, and she stood at its epicenter, bracing for an impact that would tear her life asunder. No betrayal is discovered at a convenient time, and Rachel's heartbreak would prove no exception. One crisp autumn morning, Jonathan departed for what he called a pivotal client meeting in Montreal. She kissed him goodbye, ignoring the flutter of unease in her stomach. He had promised to return the following week, leaving her to handle the upcoming charity gala for children's art programs, an event she had poured her heart into organizing. 2 days later, she stood in the nearly finalized art exhibit space, double-checking lighting and display placements. An urgent phone call from the lighting technician demanded her immediate attention back at the penthouse. A missing set of cables they insisted might be in her personal supply trunk. Sighing, Rachel hailed a cab, planning a quick run to retrieve the cables. Inside the penthouse foyer, everything felt oddly still. She expected the hush, no staff that day, and Jonathan was out of town. But something intangible made her heart race. She walked through the living area, heading toward the back storage closet. As she passed the master bedroom hallway, muffled sounds pricked her ears, hushed voices, a stifled laugh, one unmistakably female. Her pulse thundered. Could Jonathan have returned early? He was supposed to be in Montreal. The second voice, female and heartbreakingly familiar, sent ice flooding her veins. Miranda? Step by step, dread coiled in her chest. She inched closer to the closed bedroom door, each footfall heavy with apprehension. Pressing an ear to the door, Rachel heard a rustle of sheets, a soft moan, the distinct timbre of Jonathan's voice. She clutched at the doorknob with trembling fingers. A single twist, and the door cracked open. The sight that met her eyes shattered everything. Jonathan, shirtless, tangled with a woman whose face was momentarily hidden by tousled hair, but the silhouette was unmistakable. Then the woman turned, and Rachel's world collapsed into an implosion of betrayal. Miranda Garcia, her best friend, intimately wrapped in Jonathan's arms. Rachel's breath caught in her throat, shock pulsing through every nerve. She froze, a silent statue in the doorway, time distorted, stretching painfully. Inside the room, Miranda's eyes flicked open, landing on Rachel. Horror dawned on her face. She jerked away from Jonathan, who spun around, equally stunned. For a heartbeat, all three stood in a tragic tableau. Then Rachel found her voice raw, trembling with fury and heartbreak. "How could you?" she rasped. No tears came yet, only a searing sense of betrayal that made her chest feel as if it might implode. Her gaze darted between them, searching for any explanation, any sign of an elaborate misunderstanding. But the truth lay bare in disheveled sheets. Miranda scrambled for clothes, stammering nonsense. Jonathan opened his mouth, likely to spout some excuse. But Rachel spun on her heel, adrenaline surging, and fled the bedroom. She needed to escape before the pain devoured her. The single phrase echoing in her mind, "My husband, my best friend, how dare they?" And as she sprinted out, heartbreak clenched her heart like a vice, ushering in a new era of unimaginable devastation. Rachel barely remembered how she reached the elevator. Her limbs moved on autopilot, her mind swirling with images she couldn't unsee. Jonathan's face contorted with panic, Miranda's lips parted in guilt. The elevator's reflective walls offered no solace, only magnifying her tear-stricken expression. Once in the lobby, she stumbled outside, ignoring the doorman's concerned greeting. She flagged the first taxi she saw, collapsing into the back seat with a strangled sob. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked gently, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Rachel couldn't muster a location. Home was defiled by treachery, and she had nowhere else in mind. After a broken moment, she whispered an address, one that belonged to her longtime college friend, Olivia Brooks, who lived across town. Olivia was among the few people Rachel trusted, someone outside the Jonathan and Miranda sphere. She arrived in a daze, climbing the stoop to Olivia's modest apartment. At the knock, Olivia answered in pajamas, confusion etched on her face. Without words, Rachel burst into sobs. Olivia ushered her inside, arms wrapping comfortingly. The next hours became a blur of trembling confessions, tears streaming as Rachel recounted the horrifying discovery. Olivia listened, stunned, occasionally cursing Jonathan and Miranda under her breath. By evening, the raw ache had dulled to a throbbing numbness. Rachel had no appetite, though Olivia tried coaxing her with soup. She stared vacantly at the city lights beyond the apartment window. The phone buzzed incessantly, calls from Jonathan, even a few from Miranda. Each ring seemed to slice deeper into her soul. She turned off the phone, shutting out their attempts to spin the situation or beg for forgiveness. She needed space. She needed time to process how her husband and best friend had carried on an affair under her nose. The puzzle pieces of suspicious behavior fell into place with cruel clarity. The late nights, the inside jokes, Miranda's unwavering push for Rachel to trust Jonathan. It wasn't just a passing fling, it was a betrayal so layered that Rachel felt physically ill at the magnitude of it. Olivia offered to let Rachel stay indefinitely, but Rachel worried about burdening her friend. She considered hotels, but with the scandal that might soon erupt, any public setting felt risky. She also thought about returning to her family in upstate New York, yet that would mean confronting humiliating questions from everyone. For now, she curled up on Olivia's couch, face puffy and eyes red, trying to stave off panic at the thought that her once stable life had crumbled overnight. Sleep offered no reprieve. Nightmares replayed the scene, Miranda's startled face, Jonathan's half-naked form. Rachel woke repeatedly, tears soaking the pillow, each time wishing the images were illusions. But reality was harsher. Her husband was unfaithful, and the person she once called sister of the heart was the other woman. The next day's dawn found Rachel no closer to understanding how to move forward, only certain that she could never trust them again. Morning light found Rachel still curled on Olivia's couch, eyes swollen from a sleepless night. The reality of the double betrayal weighed on her chest like a boulder. She braced herself to check her phone, which had been turned off all night. Powering it on, a flood of messages rolled in. Jonathan had texted and called repeatedly, each message more desperate than the last. Some were pleas for her to come home and talk, others were hurried apologies, and a few even shifted blame, as if her distant behavior had somehow contributed. Miranda's messages, fewer but no less painful, apologized in rambling paragraphs, claiming it was an accident or a moment of weakness. Reading them turned Rachel's stomach. She turned the phone off again, repulsed. Olivia insisted Rachel take at least a few days off from the demands of social events. The art gala Rachel had helped plan was imminent, but she couldn't imagine facing the public or continuing normal duties. A meltdown was inevitable if she had to plaster on a smile. She texted Paula, her co-worker at the charity, vaguely citing a family emergency and requesting coverage for the event. Paula, worried, agreed to handle it. The second day after the betrayal, Jonathan attempted a new tactic. He sent flowers, lavish orchids that nearly filled Olivia's small living room. The attached note claimed he was a fool, that he loved Rachel and couldn't picture life without her. Rachel scoffed, discarding the note in the trash. No grand bouquet could mend the memory of his body entwined with Miranda's. By the third day, the media stirred. Gossip columns noted that Rachel had mysteriously vanished from Jonathan's side. A photograph circulated showing Jonathan leaving his penthouse looking disheveled, fueling speculation about marital discord. So far, no direct mention of Miranda emerged, but Rachel dreaded the moment the press discovered the affair. Jonathan was a high-profile figure, and scandals like these rarely remained quiet for long. Meanwhile, a swirl of conflicting emotions raged inside Rachel. She still felt love for the husband she once knew, gentle, supportive, charismatic. She yearned for an explanation that would magically absolve them both, though she knew it was impossible. Simultaneously, a fiery hatred flared for the man who had brazenly lied to her, humiliating her so deeply. Worse was the sense of betrayal from Miranda, the woman she had considered a sister. That cut deeper than any heartbreak from Jonathan. She had shared secrets, dreams, vulnerabilities with Miranda. How could her friend betray her trust so brazenly? Olivia urged her to consider legal counsel. He's a millionaire, Raksh. You can't just trust that he'll do right by you. The mention of divorce sliced through Rachel's chest like a blade. She realized she wasn't prepared to face the legal complexities, the dismantling of their marriage, or the potential backlash from powerful associates who might side with Jonathan. But she also knew staying silent would only further degrade her self-worth. She stared out the window at the passing city traffic, lost in thought. A crossroads loomed, fight for her marriage or sever it. Either path promised more heartbreak. For now, she only knew one truth. She wouldn't be returning to Jonathan's penthouse. Not until she found a shred of clarity in this emotional storm. Rachel managed to maintain her distance for nearly a week before Jonathan found a way to corner her. She left Olivia's apartment one afternoon to attend a crucial meeting at Bright Futures regarding an art therapy initiative. Emerging from the building's revolving doors, she froze upon spotting Jonathan leaning against a sleek black sedan parked across the street. Immediately, her pulse sped up, though she steadied herself. He looked haggard, dark circles beneath his eyes, hair unkempt. As soon as he saw her, he crossed the street, ignoring honking cars. She braced for an unpleasant scene, glancing around warily paparazzi might lurk, but she saw no obvious cameras. "Rachel," he said, breath catching in his throat, "we need to talk." She clenched her jaw, turning to walk away. "I have nothing to say to you." He quickened his pace to keep up, voice low and urgent. "Please, 5 minutes. I'm begging you." The desperation in his tone tugged at the corner of her anger. Reluctantly, she led him around the corner to a quieter side street. Her arms folded defensively. "Speak." He inhaled shakily. "I'm so sorry. What you saw, I can't justify it. I messed up badly. It was never about love or even real desire. Miranda manipulated me." Rachel's eyebrows shot up, rage igniting. "Are you blaming her? She's not innocent, but you made your choice. Don't insult me with excuses." Jonathan ran a trembling hand through his hair. "It wasn't an affair in the sense you think. It's complicated. He closed his eyes. I got pulled into this. It started as a misunderstanding. She came on to me, and I was lonely. You seemed distant, busy with your charities, always suspecting me. I felt unappreciated. Unappreciated? Rachel spat. You're the self-proclaimed multi-millionaire I dropped everything to support, and you felt unappreciated. He grimaced, tears gathering in his eyes. I know. It's indefensible. But I love you. I want to fix this. I'll do counseling, sign any contract you want. Just please, come home. Part of Rachel's heart twisted, recalling how deeply she'd loved him. But the memory of him wrapped in Miranda's arms was a fresh wound. Her voice wavered. Your pleas mean nothing. You betrayed me with my best friend, Jonathan. The one person who was like a sister to me. That's not a mistake. It's a pattern of deception. He reached for her hand. She snatched it away. Rachel, I'll do anything to make it right. Let me prove it. A swirl of emotions threatened to collapse her composure. She hardened her gaze, stepping backward. I'm not sure there's anything left to fix. We're done at least for now. Jonathan's face fell, his hope flickering out. He wanted to argue further, but she pivoted and walked away, fighting tears. She could sense his agony behind her, but refused to turn back. If he truly wanted redemption, he would need to show more than words. Meanwhile, her shattered heart ached, a storm of sadness and anger surging within. She wondered if he'd chase after Miranda again. If anything, the conversation only left her more uncertain, haunted by how swiftly a life built on supposed love could disintegrate under the weight of betrayal. Days after that brief encounter with Jonathan, Rachel realized she had scarcely confronted Miranda's role in the betrayal. The woman who once championed her every success, who listened to her fears about marriage, had become the center of her heartbreak. Part of Rachel yearned to unleash fury upon Miranda, to demand an explanation for how she could so callously destroy their bond. Another part dreaded hearing the same worthless excuses Jonathan spewed. Still, she needed closure. She arranged a meeting in a public cafe, selecting a quiet corner table where emotions might be contained. The tension was excruciating as she awaited Miranda's arrival. Would she show up alone or run away from accountability? Miranda walked in, face pale, eyes darting with shame. She wore a simple black coat over a fitted dress, hair pulled tight in a bun, a stark contrast to her usual breezy style. Approaching the table, she slid into a seat, not daring to meet Rachel's gaze. For a charged moment, they sat in silence. Rachel studied Miranda, the friend she once considered a sister, noticing the slight tremor in her hands. Finally, Rachel spoke, voice steely. Why? Miranda swallowed hard, clasping her fingers together. I can't even begin to express how sorry I am. It wasn't supposed to happen. Jonathan and I. It started as a drunken mistake at a corporate after-party. Then She paused, blinking back tears. He felt neglected. I felt overshadowed by everything. It spiraled, but I never planned to keep it going. It just did. Rachel's breath caught, anger flaring. Neglected? Overshadowed? That's your excuse for crawling into bed with my husband? Miranda flinched. I know. It's vile. I was insecure, my job, my love life. I envied your marriage, your new life. It twisted me inside. I convinced myself Jonathan cared about me too. But it was never real. Rachel's nails dug into her palm. Then why continue? Why not stop the moment you realized it was a betrayal of everything we shared? Tears rolled down Miranda's cheeks. I was weak, addicted to the thrill, the attention. I didn't know how to back out without losing your friendship or risking Jonathan exposing me. It's no excuse, I know, she sniffed. I hate myself for it. Quiet fury warred with heartbreak inside Rachel. She wanted to scream, lash out, but a weary sadness hollowed her voice. You destroyed me, Miranda. Everything we had, our years of trust. You not only betrayed me, but also stood by watching me spiral in doubt. Miranda wiped her eyes, voice trembling. If there's any chance, any path to forgiveness, I'll do whatever it takes. Rachel's gaze hardened. Forgiveness? This isn't a petty dispute. You conspired with my husband behind my back. You've demolished the bedrock of trust I placed in you for a decade. Do you even realize the magnitude? Miranda bowed her head, tears splashing onto the table. For a moment, Rachel felt the pang of sympathy for her once beloved friend, but it was fleeting. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too raw. She stood abruptly, ignoring curious stares from other patrons. We're done, Miranda. I can't have you in my life. Miranda whispered a broken "I'm sorry" as Rachel turned on her heel, footsteps echoing with finality. Walking away, Rachel felt an odd numbness. She had chosen to cut ties with the friend who once meant everything. Any illusions of reconciliation or a gentle salvage of their friendship were lost. The heartbreak was irreparable, and in that moment, Rachel realized she had to stand on her own, forging a path forward, minus the two people who once formed the closest circle of her world. Rachel's heartbreak evolved into grim determination. She recognized that a messy separation from Jonathan was inevitable. The betrayal was too severe for half measures or temporary solutions. Encouraged by Olivia, she consulted a respected divorce attorney, Grace Whitfield, known for handling high-profile cases discreetly. Grace, a poised woman in her 40s, listened intently as Rachel laid out the details: Jonathan's wealth, the prenuptial agreement she had naively signed without thorough review, and the humiliating affair with Miranda. Her professional demeanor offered no trace of judgment, only a systematic approach to safeguarding Rachel's interests. First, Grace began, we need to assess the prenup's terms. Is there an infidelity clause? Did Jonathan's behavior breach any conditions? We'll also want to examine marital assets, potential property entitlements. With his high net worth, negotiations can be tricky. But your moral standing is strong. There's a clear betrayal. Rachel sat, spine rigid. I never wanted to fight over money, she admitted. He built his empire. But after what he did, I don't trust him to be fair unless the law forces his hand. Grace nodded sympathetically. Understandable. We'll proceed carefully. My biggest piece of advice: don't communicate with him without legal counsel present, especially about settlement terms. Keep emotional conversations separate. Despite her heartbreak, Rachel appreciated the clarity. She couldn't float in limbo forever, battered by false apologies or manipulations from Jonathan. She also fretted about how the scandal might explode in the media, tainting her charitable work. Grace agreed to manage any PR angles with caution, ensuring Rachel's privacy was as protected as possible. In the weeks following their initial meeting, Grace's team dug into the prenup and discovered it was surprisingly lenient. Jonathan had insisted that should the marriage end due to his fault, like an affair, Rachel would be entitled to a generous settlement. He likely never expected to be the unfaithful party. This gave Rachel a stronger position than she'd anticipated. News of the impending divorce soon trickled through Manhattan's rumor mill. Speculation soared. Did Jonathan's rumored affair with some unnamed woman catalyze the split? Paparazzi sometimes swarmed near Olivia's apartment, vying for a shot of Rachel. She managed to stay out of public eye for the most part, refusing any interviews. The media had yet to connect Miranda's name to the scandal, though Rachel suspected it was only a matter of time. Jonathan attempted to meet with her multiple times, but Grace interceded, warning him to communicate only through her office. Late-night texts from him still pinged Rachel's phone, lamenting regrets, threatening to fight for them, or painting Miranda as a manipulative temptress. Each message sent Rachel's anger flaring anew, though she remained silent. She was forging a new path, guided by a bruised but resolute sense of self. The heartbreak still pulsed, raw at night when memories threatened to overtake her. Yet each day, she took one step further from the wreckage Jonathan and Miranda left behind, clinging to the faint hope that from the ashes of betrayal she could rebuild a life anchored by her own worth. The precarious balance of secrecy unraveled on a crisp December morning. A major gossip outlet published an exclusive with the headline, "Millionaire Jonathan Thompson's secret affair with wife's best friend exposed." The article included unsourced quotes, references to a meltdown at the penthouse, and speculation that Jonathan's mistress was none other than Miranda Garcia, a rising PR professional. Rachel awoke to her phone, buzzing non-stop calls from acquaintances, texts from concerned friends, even a timid message from her mother. She stared at the article in disbelief, her shame and fury intensifying. Photos accompanied the piece, paparazzi shots of Miranda entering the penthouse on nights. Jonathan claimed to be away, an image of Jonathan's anxious expression as he stepped out of an SUV near Miranda's building. The tabloid had woven the entire narrative, painting Rachel as the devastated spouse. Panic threatened to swallow her. She dreaded the onslaught of pitying stares or, worse, malicious gossip that would swirl in high society. But Olivia, steadfast as always, rallied with a plan. She insisted Rachel release a concise statement through Grace's legal office, confirming the separation without revealing personal details. Grace agreed, drafting a calm, precise note that read, "Miss S. Rachel Thompson confirms that she is in the process of ending her marriage to Jonathan Thompson following irreconcilable differences and a breach of trust. She requests privacy as she proceeds with legal counsel." The statement circulated quickly, overshadowed by tabloid sensationalism. Meanwhile, Miranda's name trended on social media, her PR firm caught in a tempest. Anonymous insiders spilled that she'd been terminated from a recent contract. In a twisted sense of satisfaction, Rachel felt a surge of relief. Miranda was facing consequences for the betrayal. Still, she couldn't help but feel sorrow for how everything had disintegrated so publicly. Jonathan, evidently scrambling for damage control, gave an ill-advised interview with a local business magazine. He insisted that rumors of an extended affair are overblown, suggesting that while a mistake occurred, it was not as malicious as portrayed. He even cast doubt on Miranda's intentions, painting himself as a victim of seduction. The half-confession only fueled more speculation, driving a deeper wedge between him and the city's sympathy. Rachel struggled to keep her composure each time the scandal reared its ugly head. She forced herself to focus on philanthropic commitments, ignoring sidelong glances from new acquaintances uncertain how to approach the scandalized ex-wife. She visited the children's art programs she loved, determined not to let shame derail her mission. The kids mercifully had no interest in tabloids. Their innocent smiles and cheerful finger paint masterpieces grounded her in a sense of real meaning, far from the superficial swirl of gossip. Through it all, she clung to the knowledge that the divorce process was in motion. Grace reported progress in negotiations. Despite the public fiasco, Jonathan seemed inclined to settle quickly, likely to avoid more humiliating details emerging in court. For Rachel, the next steps felt uncertain, but at least she saw a glimmer of light beyond the scandal's shadow. Perhaps, she thought, once the dust settled, she could rebuild a life untainted by Jonathan's broken promises. It would take time, tears, and enormous resolve, but she was determined to reclaim her future. Weeks drifted by, carrying winter's chill deeper into Manhattan. Rachel spent them navigating the final stages of her divorce settlement with Jonathan. According to Grace, the financial agreement took shape in Rachel's favor, largely due to a prenuptial clause triggered by Jonathan's infidelity. Rachel had never intended to profit from her heartbreak, but she also understood the practicality of ensuring her independence. For all his failings, Jonathan seemed motivated to settle quickly, likely to stanch the media bleeding. He avoided public confrontations, retreating into a quiet PR strategy orchestrated by top crisis managers. They spun a narrative of private negotiations, deflecting direct blame. Meanwhile, Miranda vanished from the social scene. Some rumors placed her in Los Angeles, job hunting for a fresh start. Rachel tried not to dwell on it. She had no desire to track Miranda's fate. In quieter moments, Rachel reflected on her next steps. Freed from the illusions of her marriage, she recognized how she had neglected her own aspirations. She dusted off old sketches, reacquainting herself with the passion for art curation that once fueled her. She considered launching a small gallery or a creative consultancy, using some of the settlement funds to jumpstart a new venture. The idea lit a spark of excitement in a heart battered by betrayal. Therapy sessions became a source of solace. Encouraged by Olivia, Rachel found a compassionate therapist who guided her through the emotional aftermath of double betrayal. The therapist's office became a safe space for tears, confessions, and gradual acceptance. She learned to release the guilt that perhaps she wasn't enough for Jonathan, or that she should have foreseen Miranda's treachery. Over time, she discovered the capacity to forgive herself for trusting those who proved unworthy. One crisp Sunday, as she strolled through Central Park with Olivia, a sense of renewal flickered. The sun broke through winter clouds, glinting off patches of snow, a subdued metaphor for hope shining in the bleakness. She laughed for the first time in weeks, a genuine, unburdened laugh that startled even her. Olivia, noticing, squeezed her arm, beaming. "You're going to be okay," her friend said softly, and for the first time, Rachel believed it. Later that evening, back at Olivia's apartment, Rachel read the final draft of the divorce settlement. A swirl of emotions welled: relief, sadness for the good times that once were, and an odd gratitude that she would soon close this painful chapter. She recalled the young woman she had been when she first fell for Jonathan, starry-eyed, naive, brimming with romantic ideals. She wasn't that girl anymore, and perhaps that was a necessary evolution. By the next day, Grace confirmed a date for the final hearing, an amicable, behind closed doors proceeding to finalize terms. Rachel exhaled, bracing herself for the official dissolution of a marriage she once believed would last forever. While heartbreak lingered, she also felt an undercurrent of strength. She'd survived unimaginable betrayal, gleaned hard lessons about trust, and discovered an inner resilience that would guide her into a future shaped by her own vision. The path to healing was far from over, but she could sense the worst storms were passing. The horizon, though uncertain, beckoned her forward. On the morning of the divorce hearing, Manhattan's sky hung low with grey clouds, threatening rain. Rachel, dressed in a simple black dress, pearls at her neck, a subdued reflection of her status, no longer a starry-eyed trophy wife, but a woman determined to face closure with dignity. Olivia accompanied her, offering moral support. The private courtroom setting was surprisingly small, with a single judge presiding behind a wooden bench. Jonathan arrived with his attorney, sporting a tailored suit and a tired expression. He offered a faint nod to Rachel, who acknowledged it with a curt dip of her head. There was no need for pretense or illusions anymore. Grace guided Rachel through the proceedings, ensuring each clause of the settlement was recognized. The entire hearing lasted barely 30 minutes. The judge confirmed that Jonathan's documented infidelity triggered certain provisions in the prenuptial, awarding Rachel a fair financial sum and disclaiming any future spousal claims. No children were involved, so custody battles did not apply. At the end, the judge stated simply, "Your divorce is granted." A wave of emotions flooded Rachel's sadness for what might have been, relief that the official bond with a cheating partner was severed, and a pang of finality that closed an entire chapter of her life. She caught a glimpse of Jonathan's eyes across the room. He looked as though he wanted to speak, perhaps to utter one last apology, but Grace hurriedly led Rachel out, mindful of avoiding any more emotional entanglements. Outside, the first droplets of rain peppered the pavement. Olivia shielded Rachel with an umbrella, guiding her to the waiting taxi. Once inside, Rachel exhaled a tremulous breath. "It's done," she whispered, voice tinged with disbelief. "Just like that, I'm not Miss S. Thompson anymore." Olivia squeezed her hand. "Maybe you never truly were. The woman you are can finally stand on her own." Rachel let the words sink in, heart heavy, yet oddly light. She'd arrived in the city years ago, hoping to become part of something bigger, first Jonathan's world, then the illusions of a storybook marriage. Now, ironically, she was forging a new identity, not Jonathan's wife, not Miranda's best friend, but simply Rachel, an independent woman with uncharted potential. That night, alone in Olivia's apartment, Rachel rummaged through old wedding photos. She paused on one, a radiant bride in white, beaming as Jonathan slipped a ring on her finger. Tears slipped down her cheeks, a mourning for the innocence lost. She gently placed the photos in a box, sealing them away. She wasn't discarding her history, only acknowledging it was done. A small voice inside her whispered of fresh starts. She thought of launching her dream gallery or continuing her philanthropic endeavors free from the Thompson name. She resolved to begin searching for a studio space soon. She might even plan a small exhibition featuring artists from underprivileged backgrounds. The glimmer of purpose lit her mind, overshadowing the gloom of heartbreak. In time, she would find new friendships, trust new people, maybe even risk love again. For now, she let herself feel the grief and the slight liberation that accompanied being truly alone. This final hurdle, the official dissolution, made way for the slow process of healing, a path that would see her stepping into tomorrow with a quiet determination to rebuild her life on her own terms. The weeks following her finalized divorce marked a transformative period for Rachel. Freed from the constraints of a scandal-ridden marriage, she poured energy into a vision she'd long deferred. With settlement funds carefully allocated, she secured a modest but promising studio space in the Lower East Side, a raw, brick-walled loft brimming with creative potential. Tapping into her old network of fellow art enthusiasts, she curated a small, vibrant collection showcasing emerging talents. Her passion revived, selecting pieces, hosting intimate previews, forging connections with collectors who appreciated more than just brand-name artists. This nascent gallery, labeled New Horizons, symbolized her rebirth from victim to visionary. Though the scandal still cropped up in certain gossip circles, Rachel no longer cowered. She carried herself with quiet grace. If acquaintances gossiped about her divorce or whispered about Miranda's rumored downfall, she merely offered a calm statement that she'd moved on. She refused to let bitterness define her. Instead, she used the public's fleeting interest to subtly highlight her new philanthropic mission. Part of every sale at her gallery supported an art therapy program for inner-city youths. Support sprouted from unexpected corners. A few women in Manhattan's upper crust, themselves survivors of marital betrayals, reached out to cheer her on. Some even commissioned pieces to help support her new cause. Rachel found a budding camaraderie among these women, forging fresh friendships built on mutual empathy rather than superficial niceties. Meanwhile, loyal allies like Olivia and Paula stood by, cheering every milestone. One breezy spring afternoon, as she rearranged canvases in her gallery, a messenger arrived delivering an envelope. Inside lay an invitation to a posh charity ball, a cause Jonathan's firm once championed. Scrawled on the invite was a note: "We'd be honored if you attend as a philanthropic leader." Sincerely, the organizing committee. The notion that she was recognized for her own philanthropic endeavors, independent of Jonathan's shadow, warmed her heart. She set the invitation aside, pondering whether she was ready to re-enter that swirl of high society on her own merits. In a reflective moment, she realized that in forging her new identity, she had proven something essential. Heartbreak can be devastating, but it doesn't have to define one's destiny. She had survived the double betrayal of the two people she loved most, and discovered that beyond betrayal lies a field of possibilities for growth, independence, and rediscovered self-worth. That evening, standing in her gallery's doorway, she watched the sun setting across Manhattan's skyline. A painting by a young street artist behind her glowed in the final rays of light, an abstract swirl of bold colors that exuded hope. She thought of the naive girl who once arrived in the city chasing a dream, only to find it twisted by illusions. Now, she felt the surge of confidence in forging a dream shaped by her own choices. Stepping forward, she locked up for the night, tucking the keys into her purse with renewed purpose. The memory of Jonathan and Miranda's betrayal would always ache, but it had also catalyzed her transformation. Tomorrow, she would face the world again, stronger, wiser, and fiercely determined to craft a future built on honesty, artistry, and self-love. Betrayal often strikes when least expected, and few pains run deeper than a spouse's infidelity with a trusted friend. For Rachel Thompson, that discovery shattered her illusions, but it also awakened a strength she never knew she possessed. Step by trembling step, she confronted heartbreak, cast off the lies that bound her, and emerged with a renewed sense of self. No longer defined by her husband's affluence or a friend's deceit, Rachel found the power to reshape her destiny, forging a life where her passion and dignity shone brighter than any scandal could eclipse. If you were moved by Rachel's raw, unfiltered journey from anguish to empowerment, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you stories of real, unflinching emotion tales that remind us even the gravest betrayals can ignite the flames of renewal. Thank you for watching, and may you find hope in every challenge that comes your way.